Hello and welcome back around the bonfire. It's the show that is not going to make the joke it would like to make because then Austin would be like, "Why do you guys keep cussing?" Back with Tim, it's John.
There's a Chicago alderman who was recently reported using a swear word, and it just is a hilarious quote to be saying in like any kind of professional context. So like any young and impressionable listeners, one, I'm sorry because we're probably frying your brain not with cuss words, but with the analysis that we throw out, and two, like that is never an appropriate way to act in a work environment.
Just for reference, we get a little countdown before we actually start recording for these. Tim, as soon as he presses the button, is like, "Hey, did you see that quote?" Knowing that I'm trying to come up with a little one-liner to start this show. So, look,
Warm
anywho,
open. It's a warm open.
warm open. Look, hey, we are fresh off of like it was the best type of Open Cup midweek, right? Because the Fire won, and we got cup sets, and there's still a chance we get another tonight. Although I haven't actually checked if St. Louis and Tulsa are playing. Let's start there. Chicago Fire winning over Detroit City FC. It was excuse me, it was a 2-1 win off the back of a Jason Shokalook brace. Great performance from the youngster, the former MLS Next Pro MVP. Bags 2 goals, excuse me, within 2 minutes of each other.
Also Golden Boot winner.
Yeah, also Golden Boot winner. No, he didn't actually win MVP. David Parebo won the MVP. Jason Shokalook should have won the MVP, but didn't because they didn't want to give it to a Fire player back to.
Yeah, MLS never likes giving the MVP to the same team, guys from the same team back to back. Looks at Inter Miami. All right, that's a little bit of a different story.
Well, Tim, he's doing it with a different coach every year.
By the way, St. Louis City, just while we're recording, just to give John an update, is up 3-0 in the 66th minute, and FC Tulsa's Louis Stelfer just got a red card. So it's looking like the Fire will be playing St. Louis City unless the craziest of cup sets happens.
Tim, DC United and one Knoxville SC are going to penalties, it looks like, though, or extra time, excuse me.
Yeah, no, there have been cup sets. I'm just saying that this matters for us because this would be whoever wins this one's the Fire's next opponent.
Yeah, I'm just also telling you about that because I thought you would like to know. Yes, but it does appear, barring any sudden changes, Chicago Fire will be facing St. Louis City in Chicago or Bridgeview maybe in the next round. But we'll talk about that in a second.
Probably Bridgeview.
Yeah. But we'll talk about that in a second. We did end up seeing some debut starts, as it were. Puso Ditejan, Victor Radojevic, David Pareba, and Jason Shokalook all making their first starts for the first team on Tuesday night in Detroit. And I think overall, got a group of guys there who were interested in the development of either for potential starting reasons or potential depth reasons. I think maybe a good place to start is, generally speaking, outside of Puso and his red card that we'll talk about, I'm sure, I thought they all acquitted themselves well, right? I think each of those guys performed some positives, some negatives in different aspects, but overall, I think I was impressed on the whole, if that makes sense.
Yeah, look, it was not the prettiest win, and I think that the Fire they didn't rise to the occasion to the extent I think that they could have, and I think that there is a lesson to be learned here, right? Like they beat a USL Championship team who are a decent USL Championship team, but they beat them 2-1, and they let it get interesting with a red card, and they didn't put the game away as quickly as they could have, and I think all of that is just a good lesson about focus. And look, there's reasons behind it. Like it looked like the pitch quality wasn't good. Greg mentioned that was a talking point before. Like they knew the lighting was not going to be great. I don't exactly know what the issue was with it because I wasn't there. Joe Chats was. They knew that the pitch was not going to be good. It was the same lighting and pitch for both teams. Obviously more of a disadvantage to the team that's never experienced it before. But, despite that, like you're the better team, you've got to rise to the occasion. Like we've seen FA Cup games played in fields that don't look like they're rectangles and look like cows were grazing on them sometimes like a couple hours before and are missing grass on large portions. If Premier League teams can go there and do that and still come up with wins most of the time, the Fire needed to put this one away.
Tim, be careful. If you keep talking about unspecified types of football and cow fields and building fields, then I'm going to start talking about Friday Night Lights and Coach Eric Taylor, all right? Clear eyes and full hearts. You cannot lose, and the Fire didn't lose. And look, I know we've talked a lot about some of the differences between like this year, the Berhalter era and eras of past. I think 5 years ago, 3 years ago, there's a non-zero chance the Fire lose that game. right? I think that the one interesting thing to me here, and in terms of like a larger picture, it feels like every time the Fire make a substitution, the other team scores a goal. Am I crazy here? It happened again last night. Darren Smith, the wonderfully talented South African striker, credit where credit is due. He was a problem for Chris Brady and the center back grouping all night. He finally gets his goal late in the game, and it was again right after a substitution. You talk about a team that maybe loses focus at times. That seems to be a consistent theme here, even though they did hold on for to advance, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to read too much into that because we were also one of the themes I think from this. My big takeaway is that Jason Shokalook should be getting more minutes, and so I don't want to be flip flopping on the substitutions here, right?
Tim, who said that? Who's been saying that for a little bit now?
No, we both did. We both have. Like both of us have been saying it.
It's us.
Yeah. I mean, right. And so we can't be like every time the Fire make a sub, they get scored on. Like that's
yes, no. It was just another piece of the puzzle that I'm sure I'll be talking about in like July when there's not actually any games happening and we need.
I will think it. Actually, thinking about it, synthesizing things. Maybe one of the takeaways, because a lot of the time it's not like the sub is even necessarily involved in the goal that happens. I think this gets to a common criticism of Berhalter that I think there is fairness to, which is that he waits too long to substitute players, and I think that's the case here. And if that's happening, then you've got guys that are gassed, and then they are not, they're sometimes in longer than they should be, and then you have guys that are coming in cold and not acclimated to the game, even if they are involved in the play, which it does take a minute, right? Like you don't want to be subbing a guy on and like, oh, by the way, here we are defending like a free kick from a dangerous area, or it's on a corner or something like that. Like you want to have a few seconds of them being able to work their way into the feel of the game.
Yeah, and I think the important thing to note, right, Detroit had good possession. They had a lot of chances in that second half, and it did feel like leading up to those subs, things were shifting and tilting more and more and more in their favor. Ultimately, obviously, that ended up breaking, and it resulted in the goal. I do wonder if maybe the takeaway here could be make those changes when you're ahead in the game state, right, when you are kind of dominating, when you're controlling possession, and maybe that just gives your guys the opportunity to work themselves into the game, as you're talking about there.
Yeah, and I think I think that we would have probably seen more changes at half. We saw Mboazi come on for Jack Elliott, and I think that's Joel Waterman, was on, got it, long day. In any case, we saw Mboazi come on at half, and I think that was a planned sub. I think that would have been happening basically any possible way unless it had needed to happen sooner for something like a red card or some kind of reason like that. I think, if the Fire had been up 3-0, we maybe would have seen some more subs at half. I mean, because at that point, it's like you feel like the game has been put away, and, do you really need to, keep Philip Zinkernagel out there as much? And you're just feeling more in control than you were. And it took the Fire a really long time to get that first shot. Like, I think the first decent chance of the game was Detroit's. It was maybe not the best ball, and like I think that a better, like this gets to the point, like a more talented team would have been able to get a little bit more into the build-up and a little bit more on the chance. And it sent Brady sprawling. He probably had it with most of the angle, but it wasn't overly dangerous, but it could have, there's easy ways it could have been more dangerous than it was.
It was interesting watching Detroit. Like you mentioned, I mean, look, they're a good USL Championship side. Maybe not the top tier, but maybe in a similar tier to where the Fire are in MLS.
They don't get scored on a lot. Right? Like they've had two goals scored on them all year in league season, and then the Fire put 2 on them for last night. So it's not like the Fire were getting nothing. But
yeah, it's just interesting. How do I phrase this? Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. It felt like they were testing Chris Brady, which was interesting to me, right? I almost wonder if a more patient attack could have actually netted them a better performance, but it felt like every time they saw a clear shot at goal from the top of the box, they were taking it. And look, Chris Brady is just not going to be the guy that you win games like that on.
I also think that it's true that if you're being patient and build up, you weren't ever going to end up building up, right? I mean,
it's never perfect.
The Fire's game plan, like we saw Jack Elliott, like way past half, and I was thinking about that a little bit. I'm like, look, he's looked fine in the minutes we've seen him in MLS since coming back, but like is that a situation where like both he and Joel Waterman, like everybody was past the halfway point in the field other than Chris Brady, and Chris Brady was sometimes well out of his net at the same time, and it's like if there's space in behind, and I think that was part of the plan, is you're leaving that space in behind intentionally because you're pushing numbers like in a lot, but I think that I'm like, was there a possibility that you could, find some of that space if you're Detroit? And I think they knew it was going to be quick balls and it was going to be long balls. I also think on the pitch, the Fire, I mean, look, we saw guys struggling to connect 10-yard passes. And I think some of that was a focus and attention issue. I think some of that was clearly the pitch. And those are not entirely disconnected, right? Like you need to be aware of the circumstances you're in and be intentional about what you're doing. But, it, you know, I think that Detroit's adapted to playing on that surface and they know it's not going to be like tiki taka all the way. Like you're going to go direct. You are going to be like making long balls because you're not going to string together 40 passes on that field.
Yeah, look, I've got three very quick things I want to end on this with, and one I apologize I didn't give you a heads up on, but I'm thinking about it now as we talk about Jack Elliott. Jack Elliott recovering from sepsis. I was surprised he played in this game, let alone started. I'm curious your thoughts on maybe this is just kind of getting him back and into better game shape. He seemed comfortable on Saturday against Atlanta. I was very surprised Christopher Cupps was not available for selection in this game, or was not available in this game. Did not make the 17, the 16, whatever it would be for the Open Cup. Please correct me if I'm wrong. My recollection is he was not on the bench.
No, he wasn't. I mean, and I think that you hit the nail on the head. It's short benches for U.S. Open Cup games, which is partly like, I mean, it's partly a concession to the size of some of the rosters of teams that are facing it and just how much money it costs to travel. And one of the big things that has changed, and I've written about this a little bit, but the U.S. Soccer Federation has started paying for travel for amateur teams, throughout both the qualification and the Open Cup proper process, which is huge for these teams because that is a huge expense for them. And you don't win money for every game or anything like that in the Open Cup. You just get the right to sell tickets, and if you don't host games, then you don't get that right, and you win if you're the farthest team from your category, like the farthest amateur team, the farthest third tier team to advance. But like the chances of that, and it's not even that much money, so you'll probably be out if you don't sell tickets. So it's great they're providing that support, but that's also an expense for them, and again, their rosters are not that big in the first place. My read on it is just Cupps played on Saturday. He hadn't been playing at that level, and so give the teenager a rest.
Fair point. Second piece, and I just want to give you the chance to get your jokes off. Tim had an article come out that was the 3 thoughts following the game against Detroit, kind of a miniature version of our normal 5 things. And I'd just like to ask what you can report about Pouso Ditajan's red card that has left everybody, including seemingly LeBron James, confused.
Yeah, so what I wrote was just that what happened was only known to Pouso, the ref and God. It turns out, and thanks to Colin for pointing this out after reviewing it, I asked people that I knew were at the game what happened. I asked Joe. He said he didn't really get a clear read on it. This is not MLS. They don't make in-stadium announcements on these things. I'm glad that that's something that looks like it's going to become the standard for the game globally soon, but didn't happen here. And it actually was caught on the broadcast. I am not 100% sure that I saw it on my broadcast. The streaming quality was very variable, and the broadcast for this was remote, as it is for all the Open Cup games, meaning like it's 2 guys in a room in Florida that are seeing basically the same thing that we are. And so if they don't, now sometimes there's a producer on site, there's obviously camera operators on site, and sometimes they can get additional information and people can ask questions and stuff, but it just wasn't mentioned in this, and so they didn't say it, didn't really show it on the broadcast. There was no replay of it. Colin found it on camera, and it looks like basically what happens is the Fire get a ball going forward, and Pouso's being marked. He turns, and I don't know if it's intentional or not. It's again, kind of a grainy video, and I don't know if this happened with you, John, like the video quality coming in got super blotchy.
Yeah, that
like
was bad.
The Chiron itself, so like the score bug and stuff was fine.
Chiron.
Yeah.
Finish your thought, sorry.
It's Greek. It's a Greek origin word.
It's Chiron.
Yeah, but whatever. In any case, it's like that was high res. It was the video
Yes.
feed behind
Yeah.
it that wasn't, which meant that it was not like the stream to your TV from Paramount Plus. It was the stream to Paramount Plus that was the issue. And I think that it was clearly hard for them calling the game. And this is why having people in person is important, because they can see things that are not on camera, and they can talk to the audience about things that are not on camera because they're there to explain the game. But anyways, I digress. It looks like he turns and he doesn't realize how close the Detroit player, and I can't tell which player. It's just dude in red, and like it just decks him. But it really looks like he's turning, and his arm comes out kind of in a natural motion as it might when you're turning and trying to shift your center of gravity. And he, like, to Pusto's credit, he does not look like a big guy, and he just takes this dude out without even meaning to, which, I mean, is a skill, not the skill that would have been most appropriate here.
I have something to say that adds to where I'll end our Open Cup discussion for today. Detroit, man, for a city and a fan base that really loves to pride itself on being so strong and tough and cool, and we're not MLS, we're something different, a cooler, more third thing. That was the most floppingest game I've ever seen in my life.
Oh,
Dudes
yeah, they were not. Yeah, they were trying to call the refs' attention, and I think that it worked, right? Like they had they had a complete non-call. Like there was like literally nothing that would have been a foul, and it was called as a yellow card. Like it, and that's part of the game, right? Especially like there's no VAR here. The Fire are used to having that. Yellows aren't reviewable, but it's still changed the way the game is seen. There's fewer officials. Like it's all of that. It's a couple of quick things though. Like Jason Shokalook, I think one of my biggest takeaway is that I don't know if he's ready for a ton of MLS minutes. We haven't seen that yet. We've seen the goal scoring. I wrote about this in my 3 thoughts. Goal scoring translates up. Like Matt Doyle said a ton about it, and it does. Patrick Agyemang was a guy that did well in NCAA scoring goals, and then he was drafted, and then he scored goals in Next Pro for half a season, and then made his way to the first team, and then scored goals for Charlotte, and now he moved on to Derby County, and it looks like he was a favorite to make the World Cup roster until a tragic injury. Now, I'm not saying that Jason Shokalook is Patrick Agyemang or the next.
So you're
Patrick
saying
Agyemang.
Jason Shokalook is going to the World Cup this year?
Yeah, that's basically. I mean, that's just the only logical conclusion to any of this. But he had a similar trajectory, right? He scored goals actually at what's overall a better college program. I mean, Agyemang had to work his way up from D3. That's not a knock on Agyemang, but scored goals at a high level in college. Scored goals in MLS Next Pro. Won the Golden Boot, which Patrick Agyemang did not. He was only there for half a season. And hasn't really gotten the chance in Chicago. Again, there could be things that Greg is looking for from a striker that are not just scoring goals, but scoring goals has been a position, like something the Fire have needed some of, like a guy to occupy the space in the box. And both of Shok's goals were goal scorers' goals, right? One of them was set up by David Pareba. It was a great 2 midfielders we haven't seen a lot of connected. And Mercio Pineda to Sergio Orahel. Pineda on a turn that was pretty impressive. Orahel did quick to move the ball up. Pareba, and then on to great pass from Pareba, great assist, and then to Shok in the box, and he scores. So I want to see more of him in MLS. Not at the expense of a fit, healthy Hugo Kuipers that has fresh legs, but later in the game and stuff like that, in different situations, I want to see more of him. And if Hugo's injured, which he has been, I mean, I want to see more Patrick Agyemang. Or sorry, more Jason Shokalook, the next Patrick Agyemang.
Look, that's really well said. I think Jason Shokalook, this was him saying to Greg Berhalter, I'm not a starter, but I am your backup, right? Which I know sounds dumb, but it's the truth. Hugo Kuipers is hurt. He deserves a chance to play, and this was him showing look, maybe I won't be as good, and maybe I'm not even the best at this role, but I deserve more than you've given me so far.
And look, yeah, we don't know what the conversations have been between them, and it could be we trust your ability to score goals. We don't trust you doing this thing in the build-up or in pressing or in hold-up play or when we don't have the ball. Maybe that's it. But I will say, if you're Jason Shokalook and you've scored 2 goals in 2 minutes in the first start that you've had with the first team, I think that it's look, I don't know what else you want me to show you that I haven't showed you, because that was the chance that I've had, and I got a brace for you.
And man, that finish on the corner was, there are not
great, right?
that wasn't nothing. You know what I mean? That wasn't luck. That was a great finish from him.
He didn't need to know where the net was. He didn't look at it, right? Like and this it's a stereotype, right? I mean, like any professional athlete's got a good sense of where the goal is. That's how they get there. But it's like the stereotype is like he knows where the net is and he knows how to find it, and like that's exactly what he did right there.
And yeah, the body control, the understanding of his positioning on his defender, that's one thing that really impressed me. His understanding of where the defenders were and how to move between them to create space for himself. Great performance from him. I do want to give
goal scores goals. Yep.
Yeah, I do want to give a small shout out to. I thought Viktor Radojevic played well. There were moments I didn't love, but you saw what you want to see from him right now, which is incredibly physical play, good enough defensively, and some nice crossing early in the game. It faded, but
I didn't see everything I wanted to see because I wanted to see Viktor Radojevic do something that was hard enough that he would be the one getting the red card and like maybe get put on the list of that Timo Blanco's on of like guys that could never play in the Open Cup again.
Dude, I tweeted this like mid game. Like he was built in a lab to send people home in a Cook County ambulance. He's the most CONCACAF coded player of all time. Like insane crosses. And he's going to put you on the ground if you come anywhere near him. Like, he just
low
doesn't
center
care.
of gravity. Yeah, low center of gravity is just going to knock some guys around. And I hope the Fire get to the CONCACAF Champions Cup next year for a variety of reasons. Dude. But seeing him against opponents, whether it's a team that no one's heard of from Jamaica or a team like Tigres. Yeah. I'm here for it.
Look, it's honestly a shame that Andrew Gutman is maybe the best fullback in MLS because it means we just won't see Viktor Radojevic unless the games are, heavily rotated. But okay, let's move on. Let's talk a little bit of Cincinnati here before things get too far ahead of us. Just to have a bit of a snapshot here. Chicago Fire enter this game second in the East. It's currently sitting on 13 points. They're a point ahead of Inter Miami, who knows what's going on down there, man. They're 4-1-2, still only 9 goals, but only 5 allowed. They have 4 straight wins in all competitions. The health determination for Hugo Kuiper is still up in the air, as far as I'm aware, Tim, unless you have something else to share there.
Well, the team didn't practice on Tuesday because they were in Detroit, and they did not practice on Wednesday because they got back from Detroit as a day off. So do not have an update when we're recording.
Yeah, we'll find out likely tomorrow, day of release Thursday. Hopefully Hugo's back, but if he's not, we'll see what continues to go. FC Cincinnati entering kind of in the inverse, 10th in the East. They are 2-1-4, only 6 goals and 11 against. And I'm sorry, those numbers are incorrect. They have 16 goals against, trailing. They're only in the Eastern Conference behind Orlando, who's a mess, and CF Montreal, who had to release another statement saying they were really billing.
No, it was the same statement.
Oh, so they just did it again?
It was just Doyle repeating the same statement. Because that was the statement they made over. That was the statement they made. I thought they did it again.
That
was the statement with them saying you're gonna see concrete changes. And since then, the concrete changes have been absolutely nothing has changed, and it's Groundhog Day. Like I think the way that Matt Doyle, I can't remember. No, it was Goss or Bogart that said it on their pod. It was like it is just Groundhog Day. It's the same thing year after year.
That should put in context where Cincinnati is right now, because I'm putting them in the conversation with a team who I thought for the second time in less than a year had to put out a statement saying they were rebuilding because they lost so bad.
I'm not going to lie, on my list of coaches that I thought were going to be next to lose their job in MLS, Javier Mascherano was nowhere on the list. But then again, Miami, like you don't want to bet against chaos in Miami, right? Like that's just, but no, I really thought Pat Noonan is on the list because it looks like they're out of ideas. I don't think that all of this is Pat Noonan's fault. I think a big part of his roster construction. But it's clear that Noonan doesn't have the answers. And I think if you're the one in charge of that roster build, you're not going to fire all the players and you're not going to fire yourself for building the roster wrong. So the coach is the one that gets the fall.
Which, look, it's almost in some ways kind of a Bradley Carnell situation where it's like he's clearly a good coach. He'll end up somewhere else. He'll probably land on his feet. Maybe you disagree, Tim.
He's a coach. I think that, let's put it this way. I think that we can say that the jury is somewhat out from him, but that's what it is.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think, fair. Reasonable minds can disagree on that. Look, Cincinnati, to your point, they've lost 5 of their last 8 in all competitions. I didn't even realize Kevin Denke was out, but that explains all the
Kevin
Tom
Denke had a red
Barlemans
card in
we've
the last
seen.
game. Second game in a row that they had a red, by the way. So, right now, coaches preach consistency. San Diego have had red cards in 4 games, and that is the kind of consistency that coaches don't love to see for some reason because it is very consistent. But FC Cincinnati having reds in 2 games, I think says something. And like they won a home game in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. They beat Montreal. Like they're just like not.
They, but they then also, and I believe it was Tigres. They beat Tigres, and then they win, I think 3-1. They then find a way to lose in the aggregate. They lose 5-1 in the second leg of that matchup, right?
Right, which is, I mean, that's part
They're
of
a
that
mess.
Tigres, right? Like Tigres does like they 100% half butt it until they're like, oh, we need to get another goal or two, cool, and they just put it away. And like if you're a Tigres fan, you're probably mad about it, but I think that I don't think Tigres, after going down 3, like they had to go back to Mexico down 3-0 in the tie. I don't think they were sweating. I don't think they were losing sleep.
What is it? The remontada? Is that what they call it? No, look, you're talking about a team that I don't know. They're talking to Neymar. We've been down that road. Maybe just don't do it, guys. No, but they're talking about a team that lost Luca Orejano. They lost Alvaro Barriel, and now they seem to be a little bit rudderless. And I think it highlights what has been a weird situation with the Eastern Conference. You know, we had. I think I say Joe Lowry's name in every episode we do, but I just am always harkening back to it because it's still early in the year. You know,
we reward the friends of the pod with constant mentions.
Yeah, including Colin, who has come up literally every time I've talked on anything lately. Shout out Colin.
He's unavoidable. No, he's inevitable.
Yeah, Colin, clip this for me. No, sorry.
We can do that ourselves, you know. We don't need Colin to.
Yeah, but won't it be funny to see him post?
It doesn't work for you, dude.
I know. Nobody works. Anyway, look, the main point here, we thought the East was going to be a gauntlet. And while there is a glut of teams behind Nashville at the top, it doesn't really feel like what we expected, right? There's the clear front runner from Nashville. Their only loss came against the Fire, who sit just behind them. Could be even on points at the end of this weekend. Granted, that's unlikely.
If they get a second loss, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Look, Miami, New York Red Bull, NYCFC, Toronto, and Red Bull New York all sitting right behind the Fire. And you're seeing Philadelphia, Cincinnati, and a lot of other teams who are normally near the top falling off. It just feels like, as opposed to a conference full of great teams playing very well, it's a conference full of average teams playing average soccer, and somebody's got to step up, right, and kind of take that step and stand out from the crowd.
I mean, do they? This is MLS.
Fair. I thought this was interesting in the context of the Fire have 8 more games before the World Cup break. 6 of those games, including 2 against Cincinnati, are against Eastern Conference opponents. Tim, given this where they're at in terms of, you know, just relevance of how they're playing, how much would 6 points against Cincinnati in the next 3 weeks mean in terms of putting yourself in a position to be near the top of the Eastern Conference at the break?
It would be huge, right? Like now, if you had asked. If we had gone through the schedule like piece by piece in the preseason, it would have beating Cincinnati twice would have felt like a much bigger accomplishment than it feels like with where the standings are today. So there's that context, right? Of like, it's not like the Fire are like, look, if you're beating Cincinnati, that's a 6-point game each time because you're duking it out with them for a spot. Right now, Cincinnati are at the bottom of the table and the Fire are second from the top. So like, but anytime you can get those points, it's going to make a big difference. And look, like, I forget who, I'm sorry, somebody from, I believe, American Soccer Analysis did an analysis, as they do, of team schedules before and after the break. And it was based on 2025 results, which will have changed a lot, right? Like that, like the Fire's home game in October against the Union is looking very different now than it did a year ago. But the Fire had one of the biggest gaps in terms of how much harder their schedule was after the World Cup break than before. Now, again, some of that's changed, but like if you look at the teams that were decent on paper that have been putting up results, even though they look flawed so far, you know, NYCFC, Charlotte, those are teams that the Fire are facing, you know, after the World Cup break. The Colorado Rapids on Halloween, like the penultimate game of the season, that looked like a game where the Fire would be heavy favorites. Right now, the Rapids look like one of the teams that are playing exciting soccer. And, like, they're not great, but they've got stuff figured out, and they're fun to watch. And, like, that's where the Fire were last year. So that game is not looking like as much of circle 3 points. I mean, the Sounders is in September, like Inter Miami in, I believe, just the time in September. When's the other game against Miami?
It's coming
Why
up.
am I
It'll
blanking that?
be. Oh, I thought it was. It's right. It's the second game back from the break, and then they play again in August or September.
Okay.
Excuse me.
So that's, 2 games against Inter Miami after the break, and like, look, they're continually in chaos, and it continues not to matter for them, and maybe that will catch up to them at some point. Hasn't yet. So you have to think that those are going to be tough games against a good team. And I mean, there's some others that are like maybe not as earth shakers, like 2 games against Orlando City. They're not all murderers row type games, but it's a really rough schedule. So you need to try to get the points now. And look, I think the Fire are going to figure out some of the issues we talked about around chance creation and around, it's not so much finishing, it just is around getting those good chances in the right moments. And if they do that, then they will be an elite team. There's a good chance that they will need the World Cup break to figure those things out. So if you can get points before you've got everything figured out, before you've had the opportunity of a transfer window, before you've got Franco back, that is all icing on the cake.
I almost wonder, we talked about this. Gosh, it's going to bug me because I can't remember who said it, but somebody pointed out, it's 14 games before, 20 games after. I think it was Nate Bukaty when he was on. 14 games before the World Cup, 20 games after. And Tim, we haven't talked about this much. We talked about the potential of a big name European coming in, right? Somebody of the Robert Lewandowski effect potentially, or Bernardo Silva's a name that's been tossed around. Casemiro's a free agent. Who knows? No, but if nothing else, Andre Franco comes back, and it almost feels like we're talking about this in the context of the Fire of how much can you improve in one window. How much can every other team in the Eastern Conference improve in one window, right? And if you can go into this break with 6 points against a number of these teams, including FC Cincinnati, who I feel like we would both agree, I don't expect them to finish outside the playoffs. Maybe they're not going to get much past that play-in line, but I think they're too good to finish 12th in the East. You know what I mean?
I mean, I don't know. Like, it could all be falling apart for them. Like, they've got serious problems, and we didn't do that deep of analysis. I mean, like, one of the issues they've got is, like, they don't have an open DP spot at present. They could, now you can always, like, move a guy by hook or by crook if you need to, but they don't have an open DP spot, and they're spending a lot of resources on, salary cap space on their back line, and they're committed to playing a system with 3 center backs. Matt Miazgason's coming back. Well, Matt Miazgason's coming back. Like, before, he was one of the top center backs in the league, hands down. He's not looked like the player since coming back, ironically, from an ACL injury, which is a warning flag for the Fire and what could happen with Franco. I don't see how they fix those things given the roster commitments they've made. And I don't think that Pat Noonan, I think he's a very effective coach. I don't think he's the kind of coach that will be able to reinvent things on the fly. I think that he kind of does his thing, and I think that it's worked for them. They've had not the highest ceiling, right? Because no one has a photo of them winning MLS Cup or other cup competitions, right? They've won a Supporters Shield, and credit to them for that. But it's a team that has never felt like the top in the league, but it's felt like one of the best and very good. And it feels like they've taken a step back from that in every single way. And like, part of it's as simple as, like, Lucho Acosta was a special player in MLS. And I think Evander's a great player in MLS, but he's like, well, we couldn't get Lucho back because despite saying that he loved it and it was his home, he decided to leave. So we got Evander, who's like a Lucho type, and it's like getting this discount knockoff thing that's not quite as good, and they've been doing that throughout the roster.
It felt like at times, though, Evander was right there, if not slightly ahead, right? Like, there were moments in 2025 that you said, oh my gosh, like, Evander is taking this team to a different level, right? In some ways they're playing better. And look, I know Kevin Denke on Saturday, which will help the Fire tremendously. He has always given them issues. But when
you know what that means, though?
Oh gosh.
Barlow
start. There's a star man wearing blue and white. His name is Tommy Starlow, but who knows? Anyway, no, look, it's still a team that has a player in Evander who I think is, maybe kind of on the outside looking in of an MVP picture, but is one of the more talented creative players
not
in the
this
league.
year.
Yeah, not this year, but it's almost the feeling of Atlanta, right? Where it's like, you have good players, You have good players. You'll figure it out. But who's to say? Look, as I mentioned before, Cincinnati currently sitting only behind Montreal and Orlando in terms of most goals allowed, actually in the league after checking that. We've seen the Fire's attack be a little lethargic. We're talking about 4 goals in the last 3 games, including the Open Cup with Jason Shokalook brace, right? But 2 in the last 2 wins. Tim, what do the Fire need to do to actually have the attack come alive against a pretty not great starting FC Cincinnati back line? I'm just trying to find the diplomatic way to say it.
I mean, they've been playing 3 center backs, right? They're doing that partly so they can get forward. They're not very mobile, like especially lately. They have not been very mobile. Miles Robinson, he may be making it to the World Cup with the USMNT. I think that he is maybe one of the more overrated center backs in recent years in MLS. And like I said, Matt Miazga's not that good. So it's putting pressure on them. It's just getting the ball to the right places quickly enough. And it's creating things through them. And the other way is just like taking Evander out of the game, because he is a dangerous player and he can do that. I'm just going to take care of this thing myself. He can't do it 100% of the time, but he can have those moments, and he can also create some of them for others, not as much as Lucho could, which I think is the big difference. So you're not going to see as much like Evander setting up Tom Barlow as you would have Lucho setting up Tom Barlow. My God, the fictions that are going on in my head right now. So, but I think that's the trick. And look, like I said after the Open Cup game, it's about staying focused and sticking to the game plan, especially now that the Fire have 4 wins in all comps in a row. Rotation, they've faced some adversity. They are just going to be more tired, right? Regardless of minutes and stuff like that. The mental fatigue of going away and then to a different environment, one that they've never played in before, because the Fire have never played an Open Cup game there before, and then back and then away again, right? Like it's a mental battle as much as it is anything else, and just need to stay on top of it. I'm not saying they shouldn't be allowed to, and I'm not saying that's an excuse if they don't. I'm saying that that's something they need to have in their head, and they need to just nail it.
And frankly, it's just more games. It's more to think about. It's more to prepare for. It's more information you have sitting in, as opposed to having a full week to break down and break away from what just happened. You are maybe still thinking of your preparation for Detroit when you're going into your preparation for Cincinnati, right?
4-0 for St. Louis City over FC Tulsa. So the Fire will be facing St. Louis City in the round of 16, and they will be hosting it.
Did that go final?
It's final. It's full time.
Darn.
I mean, hopeful. If the results vacated somehow,
there's a chance. Look, point well taken. I think we are at the point of the show where, Tim, I'm going to ask you the question that we continually ask, because it's a question that deserves questioning. So, Tim, who's your spark, and who you got?
Man, I honestly, this is wishful thinking more than anything else. I don't think he will start necessarily. I believe that Jason Shokalook can be a spark in this game, and whether that's providing something in the second half that the Fire haven't always consistently had. They've been better lately, but they haven't always been a good team for the full 90. They've been a good team for 45 in most games, and not necessarily the whole of it. And I just look, streaks have to end at some point. This doesn't feel like the opponent that's going to end it for the Fire. I'm just going to say it maybe 2-1 win. Like, they can see out close games. Cincinnati have the ability to score goals more than they've been showing, and we've talked about Evander.
Yeah. No, point well taken. Are you okay if I cheat and say 2 names?
Sure. Is it one a first name and one a last name? No, I'm not kidding.
Well, I can do that. Look, I am gonna cheat, and I'll explain why when I give my score prediction too. I see a Jonathan Bamba, Marin Haile Selassie masterclass incoming, and the reason is also why I'm gonna say Fire 4-1. I was on the CHGO podcast, the CHGO Fire podcast with Alex Campbell earlier in the week. Thanks again to Alex. And one thing we talked about was how wide the Fire can get up front. Mm-hmm. Fire incredibly fast, very mobile, multiple guys who are good with the ball at their feet, and also finding the passing lanes to make it happen. I think when you can spread 6 players, not that they'll do this, but when you can spread 6 players across a back 3, suddenly a back 3 doesn't really feel like an advantage anymore. Especially when Yeah,
if,
and
if
especially when
Hugo's
you've got
not
guys
healthy,
who aren't particularly mobile.
if Hugo's not healthy, and so it's that 4-2-2-2 again. Like that is a solution to we don't have a central chance creator, but we're just not going to play anyone centrally up, right? Like it's going to be everything is going to be wide, and that can work.
I think there's a very real chance that in this game you see Jonathan Bamba receive the ball slightly ahead of the halfway line and send it forward to Marin on a backside run. He gets a one-on-one with the keeper and scores a goal. I think that's going to be kind of the story of this game. Fire will try to possess the ball, but that's going to be there, and I could really see the Fire taking advantage of that, especially if Hugo is out, because Marin is just frankly faster and better at those line-breaking runs. Better is maybe a strong word, but I think you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I do. And yeah, look, I'm glad to be going. Like, I'll be there in person. I think it should be a good game for the Fire, and I think that there will be interesting things to see because this is a different opponent than Atlanta. They're maybe not great right now, but they're not great in different ways, and more tape, and we love the game.
Agreed. And hey, look, if nothing else, we get to watch a little bit of football on a Saturday night, and isn't that just the most fun thing in the world? That brings us to the end of the show. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening. As always, you can stay tuned to meninred97.com. It's where you can find all of our updates, our news analysis, trending rumors, interesting stories. Sometimes they're about gluten-free hot dogs. Sometimes they're about going to Switzerland and seeing what Lugano is like. And sometimes they're about whatever we would like it to be, because that's what we do over there. You can also follow us on social media, meninred97, anywhere and everywhere that matters. Give us a follow, give us an interaction, a like, a comment, whatever it is. We do read those for what it's worth. So feel free to let us know what you're thinking. Past that, wherever you're listening to this, if you could go ahead and give it a like, a subscribe, a rate, those things do go farther than you think they do. And so it certainly is appreciated by us. Tell a friend, tell your mom, tell your dad too. Anybody who you want to share a bond with over a mutual hobby, recommend it to them, and then take them to a game, or take them to a watch party like this weekend when those will be going down because the Fire are on the road. I'm going to stop talking now. For Tim, for our illustrious producer, Austin, I'm John. Thank you so much again for joining us around the bonfire, and come on, you Men in Red.